As you might have seen in my eBay unboxing video, I've got my hands on a copy of the 2024 Player's Handbook. And in this video, I'm going to go over changes from the 2014 rules in regard to basic gameplay, general concepts around feats and classes, and so forth. I'll separately continue my videos about changes in classes specifically, and maybe do another one about spells in general. Now, I'm not making a joke here, but I'm genuinely not going to show any pages from the book because I don't want to get a copyright strike, as Wizards has been taking this action against some YouTubers who show this content. And you don't want that. No, we do not, Gary Gybox. Okay, let's start with the layout and organization of material in the book. There's a handy rules glossary in the back that gives brief descriptions of rules and concepts, ordered alphabetically by name, so you don't have to know where a rule is in the book to get a quick definition. For example, the charmed condition is listed in this glossary with a complete description of what it does. As another example, here's the listing for expertise. Expertise is a feature that enhances your use of a skill proficiency. When you make an ability check with a skill proficiency in which you have expertise, your proficiency bonus is doubled for that check unless the bonus is doubled by another feature. It goes on with a little more detail and then refers you to the proficiency section in Chapter 1 if you need more depth, but for a quick answer, it's perfectly sufficient and enough to be able to look up quickly, read quickly, and get on with your game. These glossary entries are in addition to the rules as they're traditionally spelled out sequentially throughout the rest of the book. It's just that you also have those rules descriptions in a handy place that you can look up. As far as the book's structure, it begins with the rules, including combat and healing rules, before it gets into character creation. Something about this struck me as very sensible for new players, as it gives you a context first, so that by the time you get to reading class features and so forth, you hopefully understand why they do what they do or how they might be useful. Of course, experienced players are less likely to rely on the order of chapters. I know that when I read a new set of rules, I frequently flip between different sections to get context for things I'm reading in one place. But my guess is that new players wouldn't really think to do that, but would naturally try to read it from front to back. It's even more helpful, then, that the rules content is well explained and takes more care than in the 2014 edition to explain the basics to new players. You might wonder if this gets in the way for experienced players, but I didn't find it hard at all to skip past very basic level explanations when reading for the rules changes that I wanted to find. But if you are a new player and you do read that more beginner-oriented content, I think you'll find it much easier to follow than trying to learn from the 2014 rules. It's been carefully thought out not only in writing, but in page layout, use of different highlighting techniques, and so on, to make the information just much easier to digest. Now, I think there will probably be some fringy complaints about appealing to beginners being a waste of space in the book, with the frequently recurring argument that the book would be cheaper if it didn't include this content, and instead this beginner content was accessible somewhere else, like on the web or in a separate splat book for newbies. But I really doubt this added much to the price of the book, and anyway, even if not intentionally, this kind of approach just kind of gives off gatekeeping. I personally think it's good to welcome new players into the hobby rather than make them wait in another metaphorical line or have to manage two different sources just to learn how to play. It's so much more inviting and simple to buy a complete book and just sit down and read through it. Now let's talk about changes in the core rules. First, I want to talk about how weapon mastery works. I've already done a standalone video just about weapon mastery, but at that time there was something I found mildly confusing that I now understand. To recap, weapon mastery is a feature some classes have, which allows you to access the mastery properties of weapons. It represents specialized training that makes you more capable with the weapon and able to use these properties. An example is a mastery property called Push, which allows you, when you hit with the weapon, to move the target creature 10 feet away from you. Now let's look at how the base feature works for classes that have it. A straightforward example is the fighter, for whom the rules state your training with weapons allows you to use the mastery properties of 3 kinds of simple or martial weapons of your choice. When I was just reading from the previews, I wasn't really sure what they meant by a weapon's kind, and I wondered if the equipment listings were going to group weapons by kind in addition to category and such. But reading more thoroughly the examples they give, it's very clear that kind just means the same thing as weapon. In other words, a battle axe is a kind of weapon, as is a short bow, a morning star, or a blowgun. Let's say our mascot, Gary Gybox here, is building a fighter. Ah, sweet! I'd love to get in there and bash some heads. Great, Gary. What's one weapon kind you want to choose for your weapon mastery? Battle axe. That sounds delightfully deadly. Okay, so since you've picked that as one of your mastery weapons, you get its mastery property when you use any battle axe. That property is Topple, which means when you hit a target, there's a chance the target will fall prone. Bloody brilliant! I thought you'd like that. So anyway, that's the thing to take away from this. You don't know mastery properties individually and directly, but you know them for weapon kinds of your choice up to your limit, for which you can use their individual mastery properties. Inspiration has been renamed to Heroic Inspiration and works a little differently. You still get it the same way, and you can still have only one point of it at a time, but it does something slightly different now. In the old rules, you could use Inspiration to get advantage on an attack, saving throw, or ability check. With Heroic Inspiration, you can instead spend it to re-roll after any roll, and you must accept the re-roll result as final. Surprise in combat works differently too. Instead of surprised combatants losing their first turn, combatants who are surprising them get advantage on their initiative roll, so it's now less likely that a surprise round just wipes out surprise creatures who never get to act. There are two newly listed actions you can take in combat called Influence and Study. For Influence, if you're trying to persuade somebody, it's explicit that it takes an action. This is also true for the Study action, which allows you to take knowledge types of skill checks, such as Arcana or Religion, but also specifies that these take an action. Under Movement, it's stated that you cannot use diagonal movement to cross the corner of a wall, large tree, or similar object that, quote, fills its space. I'm not sure exactly what this means, but it sounds to me like you now can't make a diagonal move like this. On the other hand, the wall in my example doesn't fill the space the creature is moving from or to, but at the same time, if that's literally what it means, it would already be obvious because you can't move through a filled space. Hopefully, this will get clarified in errata. In combat, if you choose to drop an enemy with a non-lethal attack, it now reduces their HP to 1 rather than 0, and they automatically begin a short rest, which I think implies that they are out for 1 hour rather than a dice roll. And of course, they'll definitely gain the benefits of a short rest. I thought this was a little funny, as I've definitely had players joke that they should get short rest benefits when they fall unconscious. Now, technically they can, if they're knocked out. I do take my best naps after getting brutalized into unconsciousness. For ability score changes, they no longer come from your species, but instead from the background you choose. Speaking of backgrounds, the Guild Artisan is now just the Artisan, while Outlander and Urchin don't appear in the PHB anymore. There are also 6 new backgrounds, which are Farmer, Guard, Guide, Merchant, Scribe, and Wayfarer. One big change, though, is that these backgrounds no longer include the tables of suggested characteristics like personality traits, ideals, and bonds. Also, your background grants you one named feat of a new type called an origin feat. For example, the noble background grants you the skilled origin feat, which grants you proficiency in any combination of 3 skills or tools. Now, in these new rules, there's a small change that I appreciate greatly, which is what used to be called races are now called species. This has always just seemed more accurate to me. And as far as species go, Aasimar and Orc, which appeared in Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse, have been added to the core rules as playable species, while Half-Elf and Half-Orc do not appear in the player's handbook anymore. I wonder if this goes along with a nomenclature change. In real life, we tend to use the word race to refer to a subgrouping of the human species, not for what would be a different species. But if humans and orcs or humans and elves can have viable offspring, then they aren't really different species, right? Hang about, Dave. Some species can crossbreed like horses and donkeys. Well, that's how we got mules. Oh yeah, you're right, Gary. Huh. Well, I might be looking into this too deeply anyway, because this is a fantasy game with fantasy species, not a documentary about how real biology works. But for whatever reason, they're called species now, and the half-elves and half-orcs aren't in the core book, but maybe they'll come back in a supplement. For feats, there are 3 new types: fighting style feats, origin feats, and epic boon feats. We've already mentioned origin feats, and fighting style feats take the place of the class-based fighting styles from the 2014 rules. Epic boon feats are powerful features that are available at level 19 and higher. The rest are called general feats, and there are about as many of those as there are feats in the 2014 PHB. And this covers most of the basic changes to the core rules. I'll continue to do videos about class changes and maybe a separate video about spells too. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hey, don't say that, Gary. People find it kind of annoying. Right, but it don't hurt to remind them. Okay, fine. Well, thanks for watching. and check out more of our videos covering the 2024 D&D Player's Handbook. Hey, Gary, I hear you're really good at impressions. I really am, mate. I really am. I'm brilliant. Well, what impressions do you do? Wait. Do you know who Werner Herzog is? Yeah, I know who Werner Herzog is. All right. Check this out. Years ago, people told stories around campfires. Today, they roll dice and describe what's happening as their characters. I'm Werner Herzog, and this is Who is the Dungeon and Who is the Dragon, my new film.